everyone, we're at Silverstone's booth now at Computex 2023. There is an overwhelming amount of stuff to look at here and at every booth so far, but three of the most interesting we're going to start with include this one next to me, the Alta D1. There's also the new Alta F2, which we actually have in and will be reviewing, or at least doing a large build in. And then there are these cases that have names that I think are yet to be finalized. So we've got the Concept 542. I don't know if that's what C means, but it is now. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and the CryoSheet graphene pads. These CryoSheets are molecularly stacked in the Z-axis to encourage vertical direct thermal transfer from the IHS to the cooler. CryoSheet pads are made to be easily applicable for a thermal interface and completely avoid paste dryout because it's not paste. It makes them particularly useful for long service life systems with minimal maintenance. They come in multiple sizes for suitability on the most common laptops and desktop CPUs, and you can learn more at the Thermal Grizzly CryoSheets at the link in the description below. So basically we showed the MSI motherboard where it had all the power, all the connectors, USB, SATA, everything else moved to the backside of the board. Gigabyte and Asus are also trying to do this, and the biggest problem, as we talked about in the MSI one, is that there is very limited case compatibility. MSI, which had cases at the show, did not have a compatible case for the motherboard with the cables on the back, apparently because they knew Silverstone was going to do it for them. So this will likely end up being in the Farah series. Silverstone has two variations of it. It's the same base tooling, but the front panel changes significantly, and we've got some B-roll footage of the white one that you would see with the alternative panel. They're at a point right now where Silverstone can still go either direction, so let them know what you prefer in the comments below between the two. But the main thing here is a little bit of additional depth to accommodate the cable sticking out of the back. That's obviously the number one challenge. Computers would end up a little bit wider. I was talking with Silverstone, and I think what I'm personally trying to figure out is, does the industry go this way or not? And I think it is a chicken or the egg problem where the motherboard manufacturers need to make the boards for consumers to buy. Consumers need to buy the boards. Consumers need cases to support the boards to do the builds. So we'll see where it goes. It does make sense because it eliminates cabling largely on the main side of the chassis, except for that PCIe cable or the 12-volt high power. But we've seen Asus playing around with some ideas for that. I'm sure it will be proprietary and completely closed. But anyway, that's the design for the case here. So this is the first one I've personally seen where they have support for backside cabling on the newer motherboard layout. But there's not much else for us to talk about there other than a price target probably in the range of $130, but it's TBD. This one's really interesting. This is the Alta D1. I am told that D1 stands for drive. It fits like 10 drives. So internally, this is kind of home server workstation type build. I actually really like this case. I still have the Raven RV02. It is currently unoccupied, and my next build I want to put in the RV02. Anyway, the thing I liked about that case back then was the Air Penetrator fans have always been high on the performance side. They're 180mm fans. You see those here, except these are updated, and it's the same on the F2, where the updates change the material of the fan blade externally. It's supposed to help with, my takeaway from it was friction, at least, air friction, or impedance resistance. But additionally, Silverstone has updated the IC and the motor to be able to ISO speed or ISO noise, controlling either one of those variables, increase the other. Increase the performance, ISO noise, ISO speed, which is a good, that's a good target to hit because the Air Penetrators were already pretty good. So this goes into a massive panel. There's like a 5mm thick sheet of aluminum just sitting on the top of the case. These are all different compartments you can use for 5¼ drives. So if you really like pirating DVDs, this would be the case for you. Alternatively, you could put a bunch of hard drives in it, and you could see one example of a module here. Plus, they've even got optional serial to USB connections. Now, down here in the door, this is some of that good attention to detail we were talking about at the Be Quiet booth, where companies are moving to this pogo pin or pin to pad, basically contact. So the whole door hinges open on these massive hinges because, I mean, it is heavy. It closes, And as it closes, obviously you get contact for the fans to get power, but there's also this trip here, which I think is supposed to be a kill switch, basically, on the power for the fans, just to stop it from becoming a hazard. Internally in the case, this is kind of cool as well. So there's a little bit of movement here, a couple inches or so, for the radiator mount, and then you can lock it into place with a screw. I just thought that was a neat mechanical detail. For motherboard support, SSI, EEB, extended ATX, and whatever other form factor names the industry has decided to invent can fit in here with, I think it's 11 expansion slots. Is that right? It's 11 expansion slots. So that's the D1. I mean, these kinds of cases for me are always fun to look at Silverstone. So then pricing for the D1 is going to be more than $600. They're not finalized yet. And then the F2 is somewhere in the range of $1,000. I think Amazon has it a little cheaper right now from what I'm told. So the F2, we have this in for testing. This is, although it's closed off on the front, it becomes irrelevant because Silverstone is sticking with the bottom intake. They used to make a big deal about stack effect cooling was kind of the play. And it ends up being 3 air penetrators, which are right here. A huge amount of space. I don't know, there's like 5 centimeters or something on the bottom. Drive cages can go in here, and they've also got this Alpha Cool pump down here as well. So this is like an extra compartment. And then let me remove this panel. The 3 air penetrators mount to a fan bracket, a tray. It's a radiator on top. I think it's like up to 560 or something. And for the system layout here, the most interesting element is the video card. So this is water cooled, of course, but with air cooling, Silverstone was playing around with the degree of tilt to catch a little bit extra air coming up from these fans down here into an air-cooled video card and try and benefit from it. It sounds like, although for looks it is interesting, also the angle, was it 11.3? 11.3 degrees on that angle was supposed to be optimal. How much that matters, I don't know. It's probably not a ton, but there are other options. So you can mount this direction as well. That's like kind of a modified vertical, I guess. And then you can also go more standard socketing in. For the rest, the motherboard ends up rotated in this build the way it is here. There's expansion slots. You can see them up there. So if you're wondering where else the video card can go, that's one of them here. And then this over here is the other set of expansion slots. So those are the locations you can install it. All the cables would theoretically be managed up and in here and out. And this is another huge sheet of aluminum that reveals the inner chamber up top. And you can see some springs in here where you use those to release the doors like that. So that's the case paneling. Now as for the rest, there's a couple small things on it that are kind of interesting. You saw me pulling off the dust filters. There's also this one on the back over here. So this is purely looks driven. It conceals what, you might ask? I asked the same question. It's concealing the screws for the video card of this mount to try and make it a little more uniform. And then on the opposite side, it's more of the same in terms of the dust filters. So F2 is a pretty interesting case. Very expensive, as noted earlier. It is meant to be kind of a ultra enthusiast build case, and it is one we're going to be reviewing. But I think that walks you through the basics for it. We're going to do a really quick run through the rest of the booth. A couple more things I thought were interesting, but we're short on time, as always at Computex. This was an April Fool's joke from Silverstone. They actually made it. It is not available for retail. I don't think there are plans to. Maybe if enough nerd lunatics want it, they'll make it. But I still wanted to show it. The naming for this was FLP01 because Floppy, functional 5¼ bay, and then the other one is an I/O cover. So a modernized approach. I'm told the inspiration for this was the NEC 9800 from Japan in the 80s. Apparently that was a large portion of the market at the time, except they made it white instead of beige, but honestly looks pretty cool. It was an April Fool's thing. If you're super interested, I guess you can hit up Silverstone and tell them you want it. But otherwise, let's move over to this just quickly. So this is the IceMyst line of liquid coolers. The only thing I really wanted to show here was this monstrosity that is going on. So up here, you've got the Disney lawsuit waiting to happen, and then down here, something, I don't even know, from Mario maybe, or after consuming the mushrooms in Mario. The point is, you actually can't technically do this. So this is the real product up here. This is like what it actually is. And then Silverstone has these one-off fan add-ons. So if you wanted to add, say, one fan to this for VRM cooling, that would actually kind of make sense. You could do that. But then I guess along the way, Silverstone realized we can stack as many of these as we want as long as there's clearance from the case panel, and you end up with this, which is kind of a cool showcase of an actual function in a fun way. And then let's move on to, in our rapid round of Silverstone coverage, move on to these. So for these, Silverstone has been working on a mix of home server and then actual business-to-business server case deployments. And they've got the RM series here, where actually the newer ones are, well, let's start with the older, RM44. So this case was apparently wildly popular. It is rack mountable. You can see it's got the handles up front up here, and these can be relocated as well on these cases. The problem they ran into was as soon as the 40 series came out, although the card can clear, the 12-volt high power sticking out of the top does not. And so they iterated and brought the RM51, and this is a product I think that's already on the market, but I haven't seen it. The door, I can't do this one-handed. Door opens up to reveal two 180s. They're back, they're everywhere. And Silverstone's laying it out in this configuration, at least a more standard tower. You can flatten it, of course. One of the things that was pointed out to me, though, is that as enthusiasts continue to get bombarded with things like LED cases, tempered glass, and all of the new, I don't know, embellishments you can add to them and plastic appendages, this type of stuff is kind of a return to form. Despite being more server or home server focused, you could stand it up and end up with more of a traditional tower. Where does this one hinge? Is it here on the top? And then this one, whoa, nice. It's okay, the table is made out of particle board, so the panel is fine. So 3 fans in here, reveals the IO axis as well. And then behind it, there's a radiator tray or just a fan tray if you wanted. As you saw with our server build with Wendell previously, obviously server's a different animal for cooling. You really just want front to back, and that's it. So they've got some smaller fans back here protruding out of the back, cable pass-through channel to help exhaust the air, larger 120, and then a standard motherboard with a ATX power supply. So that's kind of the layout on this one. I wanted to show this briefly as well. This is the RM600. So currently this is outfitted with, I guess, would be 3x4, so 12 hard drive sleds, and then it looks like 3 120s up here, IO on the top. But I just like honestly, just really like the casters for it, and the ease with which you'd be able to move this around, because once you start filling this many drives into a chassis, it gets really heavy, really fast. Also interesting, there is enough room where they've been able to fit 2 AIOs for 2 CPUs. So it's a dual CPU board, like a proper server, and then they've got room for intake or exhaust, bottom, back, top, as you might expect. And if we do the full rotation here, there's 2 power supplies mounted on the back, and then you can see some of the back planes in here behind all the drive cages. And that one's the RM600, which, like I said, not something we normally cover. Wanted to cover it in a rapid round because it's just kind of cool, and it's the type of stuff that we liked working with when we'd use the Silverstone CS381 box previously for our server at the office. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly, and we'll see you all next time.